Small group leaders, it's Pastor Hannah here, and I am going to be talking about something that everybody loves so much, and that is discipline. Now, when you think of discipline, the things that usually come to mind are like, don't do that, you're so bad, don't do that, stop. But what discipline actually means is the practice of training people to obey rules or a code of behavior. And I like the second definition even better. It's a branch of knowledge, typically one studied in higher education. So when I say I am establishing the discipline of Bible reading and prayer in my life, you don't think negative. You think I'm committing myself to growing closer to Christ and knowing Him better. We want that same discipline for our children. And that doesn't mean we won't have some sort of cause and effect happening in kids' church, because we're talking about discipline in this video specifically about kindergarten through 5th grade. And there is a cause and effect in kids' church, and I want you to know it and to be equipped to deal with kids who might be causing distractions or behavioral issues. Because the purpose of Oasis Kids is not to babysit. The purpose is for kids to grow in their relationship with Christ and to be an outreach to their community. And in order to do that, they have to be able to focus, they have to be able to listen, and they cannot do that if there's one or two kids who are causing major distractions. Occasionally, there will be a special case if a child has a reason they can't seem to control themselves, and we will do our best to make accommodations for them without hindering the learning of all the other kids in the class. So the first thing we're going to look at before we dive right in is Matthew chapter 18, verse 15. And it's what Jesus says about sin in the church. Because when you think about it, behavior that is counter to what is expected is a sin. Because they're choosing not to love that leader as they love themselves. If they were on stage, they would want the respect and they would want their peers to listen to them. And when someone else is teaching, either through a small group or through a lesson, if they're choosing not to listen and they're choosing to kick a chair or distract a neighbor, they're really stealing that neighbor's opportunity to really focus and get everything that God has for them. So here's what Jesus says about dealing with sin in the church. If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault, just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church. And if they refuse to listen, even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or tax collector. So let's break that down. In Oasis Kids, we have a 4-step process for discipline. One of my fingernails is gold. It's not lost. Anyways, we have a 4-step process of discipline. And what that entails is first we're going to redirect. That means you're going to try a couple of things to try to get them on the straight and narrow once again. That might involve sitting near the child, letting them know, I'm here, I'm aware of what you're doing, and I'm not okay with it. You don't always have to even say anything, especially for those who don't act up frequently. The other option is to recognize a child who's doing exactly what you want. And you're in small group, you have a child that keeps talking out of turn. You say, all right, does anyone want to answer that question? Oh, wow. Sally, you raised your hand and you're sitting so quietly. Do you guys see how Sally is being so attentive? Sally, thank you so much for respecting my time. Take that moment to acknowledge the child who is listening, who is paying attention, who is following the rules and doing exactly what you've asked of them. That will sometimes solve a lot of your discipline problems right there, because the other kids will want to come to that level. The next thing you can do, if presence and acknowledging another child doesn't work, is you're going to do our first step, and that is course correction. Billy, I see that you're kicking that chair. If you continue to kick that chair, you will go sit in this chair at the back of the room. For small group leaders, that might mean moving them away from a friend or having them sit right next to you instead of wherever they have chosen to sit. Basically, you're giving them a cause. This is what will happen if you do this, a cause and effect. If you choose to kick this chair, this is what will happen. I don't want you to just say, stop kicking the chair. I want there to be a clear expectation as to what will happen if they continue to kick the chair or to talk during service or to roll around on the floor during small group. So make that consequence age appropriate. So for a kindergartner, it might look a little different than it would for a 4th and 5th grader. All right, so Johnny decided he wants to kick the chair again. Absolutely follow through with that consequence. Have them sit in a separate space. If they choose to sit in that separate space for a few minutes and be chill and calm, invite them back into the circle. Say, thank you so much for respecting me and listening. Come on back. If they don't choose to turn it around, then there will be additional consequences. So you have redirected, you have warned them, you have moved them to a new location. 4th step would be to have them go sit with another leader. If another leader is not available, then you'll need to ask security to have them sit with security in the room or in the presence of other people. What that means is if myself or the other, if another team lead is not available to take the child, we're going to just ask security to say, can you please sit with this child? If they can't sit with the child, you'll need to call the parents at that point. If we don't have to call the parents at that point, we're going to give the kids a few minutes with security. After that, ask them to come back to the circle and ask if they're ready to listen and participate. All 4 steps have been accomplished. You have gone, you've redirected, they have received a consequence. I'm sorry, I lost track of my points. You've redirected, you've given a warning, they've received a consequence, they have been moved to sit with a team lead. Now they're still not listening to the team lead or security. At that point you say, I am so sorry, Johnny, but you have chosen to take away and steal your friend's time and you've chosen to steal my time. We're going to have to ask you to go sit with your parents for the rest of the service. You are welcome to come back next week, but this week we're done and you're going to have to go and enjoy some time with your parents. So that will be the conclusion. And there's a very specific reason for this. The reason is when a parent comes and says, why did I get called about my child? You're not just saying, oh, well, Johnny kicked a chair. You're saying, well, Johnny chose to kick a chair, and when we asked him to stop, he continued. When we moved him away from the temptation to kick the chair, he still chose to be disruptive. And then when he was given an opportunity to sit with another leader and rethink his choices, he still chose to be disruptive to the class. And unfortunately, we had to bring you in at this point. So you have now a whole line of this is how we got to from point A to point B. This is how it happened. It wasn't just I got frustrated with your child or they were annoying me. There is a specific reason for the parent to be called. And one of the things to be careful with when calling parents is sometimes if you call parents too quickly, what you do is you give away your authority. Then the child doesn't think that you have you don't have the power to enforce your rules. You don't have the power to make that classroom a safe space or a space where they can be heard, but they can also be disciplined. They can be taught. They can be establishing clear boundaries. So if they don't feel like you can establish those boundaries, it will be very difficult to establish them in the future. So that is why whenever something happens, we want it to be, this is why it's happening. You're choosing to do this, so I'm going to choose this. And when those boundaries are made clear, it makes for a class that is much calmer and more peaceful, and that is what we want. Because when we have a calm, peaceful place where kids can learn and absorb, it can be fun, it can be full of life, and they can really grow close to Jesus and know that he loves them and that he's got all sorts of cool things for them. So, if you have any questions, post them, reply to this video. I'd love to hear them. We're going to be doing a couple other things to help with discipline, including, this is just a little sneak peek, we might be doing some point systems up on the screen where you as small group leaders can award your team points, and there will be some sort of reward when we reach a certain number of points. So that's going to be down in the pipelines, and I want to make it possible for all kids to earn that reward we won't be taking away points from kids for behavior, but we will not award points for kids that are choosing to act out and are choosing not to respect you as leaders. Thank you so much for being a small group leader. We could not do Oasis Kids without you, and this ministry would not be growing the way it was without you. The kids look forward to seeing you and hearing you and knowing that you care about them every single week. So thank you, Oasis small group leaders.